thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today. I'm sure everybody knows you, likely they've been at the other three. I will put in the chat the links to the other sessions that have already taken place so that people can see them on the YouTube channel should they want to. And with that, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sandra. And thanks Community Futures, Apex, for organizing this series and this session today. This feels like a really nice natural culmination of the parts that I'm going to do. So my colleague Mark is coming to speak about financing next week, and then look at profit and pricing and how businesses should decide on the price of their products. But this market research for success follows perfectly from our business model canvas last week, when we looked at what our unique value proposition was, understanding our customer and developing a business model around that. This really is about doing the research to make sure, well, is that going to work? Like, is the market out there? Are the trends within the industry going to support that? What's the competition like? And so we're really going to walk through the market research part of the business planning process. And by business planning process, I don't just mean that document that we create, that we walk into the bank with or walk into Community Futures with and ask them for a loan for our business. The business planning process is much, much more general than that. It's how you prepare to start your business. And it is much more than just writing a single document. The market research also is so relevant to existing businesses as well. Perhaps they did lots of market research at the start and haven't looked at it since then, apart from the first-hand research they do inside their business, how they see their customers interacting with their product. But really being a bit more conscious about how we approach this is going to help us be more successful. So thanks for having me. For those who don't know me, I'm Matt Hill. I work for Business Link. I'm going to give a super quick introduction to the services we have, but this is the third week going, so forgive me if it's short. So the objectives of today are these three things, really. One, we're going to look at different types of market research and when we should be using different types. And secondly, we're going to look at some of the sources for primary and secondary market research. And I'm going to show you some of those things that are publicly available and some of those databases, things that you really can only access through us or another third party. And then finally, I'm just going to go through the Business Link market research service and just explain how you can go about accessing it. I thought I'd put my phone on airplane. I have, so we're good to go there. Okay, and so briefly about Business Link and what we do. Part of it is one-to-one guidance, support, coaching with small business owners throughout the province. So an example today, I've met with a client who is interested in doing an agri-food processing business. He's part of that industry, understands some of that industry, but really doesn't understand the direct-to-consumer marketing part of it. So part of my job has today been to connect into the people who are more experts in that area. The business support services that we provide are business planning templates, reviews. We have a business plan builder, but today, obviously, the focus is going to be on secondary market research. We've got a huge database of information available, ready to share with Alberta small businesses. And the final bit of what we do are webinars like this, training sessions, networking events in different times, and all the information that we have on our website. So if you are, I don't know, interested in importing or exporting, or if you really want to understand cosmetic labeling regulations, there's chances are we have a blog on our website about it. So that's a great place to start. businesslink.ca. That's the Business Link bit. That's the fastest I've ever done it. So I'm pleased about that. Okay, so really we're going to start by saying, well, what is market research? I think we all have probably a broad understanding of it, but we're just going to focus that down a little bit here. So I'm really breaking this into two parts. We're researching and the characteristics and needs of our target market, the industry as a whole, and the competitors that we face. So when we go through this process of research, we're going to look and try to understand the group that we serve. And we spoke lots and lots about this last week with the business model canvas. We're really going to try and understand the size of our target market, but also, I think, in some ways more important, what motivates them? What problems do they face? What pain points do they have? And then we want to understand a little bit more about the industry as a whole. What are the trends that we're seeing in that particular industry? What are the driving factors in that industry? So what data is valuable to that industry to help them understand the future health or the future growth of that industry? And finally, and I suppose this should be highlighted as well, we really, really want to understand, okay, what's the competitive landscape like? Who's offering a very, very similar service? Because without understanding who else is in that market, we can't really start to differentiate our offer and identify, well, what do we do better or do differently that we can market and share? And then once we've got that information, we're going to interpret it and hopefully end up in the situation where we can make some better business decisions. So it's great having all that information, but then we need to work on it from our own business perspective and analyze it and really understand, okay, well, now what am I going to do with this information? So to bring that to life, if I go out and do a competitor analysis and I recognize that people are generally very, very happy with my competitors, but they find it frustrating to make appointments with them. There's always a bit of a barrier, and I've called my competitors several times and the phone goes to voicemail and there's a problem there. So I have to interpret that and what actions do I take as a result of that? Or if I see certain trends within my industry, what am I going to do with that information? One that I was looking at just before coming on the call here was in the hair and beauty space, and an increasing desire from customers to do more DIY. And that can be because they don't have available funds or that they want to be more creative and they see things on YouTube. Well, it's great to have that information. They want to do more themselves, but what business decision can we make off the back of that? Okay, and then so why do we do market research? I mean, the third point there is very, very significant. And I think it all comes down to this, really. It helps us make better business decisions. We can validate our ideas. So we're going to have guesses, assumptions. We think our customers will like this. I've got a lifetime of experience in my industry, and I think that this is the thing my industry needs. But without doing the research, we don't know for sure. And for some people, if the barriers to entry are very, very low, like if it's like, oh, I'm going to offer this new flavor of hot sauce, and it means that I can make a small batch and test it. Well, yeah, we could do it in a very real way in the actual market. But if we're going to have to invest our time or lots of our money in something, we're probably going to want to do some research first to make sure that we're not making that investment in an inefficient way. It can help us make better products. We can design our products better the more we understand the needs of our customers. And don't think of that in the very, very literal way of, yeah, like I say, a sauce flavor. But the products that we have can be so much more. It can be back to that thing of how our customers want to book or engage our service. How, like for, let's say, an accounting office, an office of accountants, very traditional business. But really, there are still many ways that they could design their offer to meet the needs of their clients. Perhaps people want subscription. Perhaps people want virtual appointments. Perhaps people want a dedicated in-person service. I mean, there's a variety of ways we can design our offer if we're a service provider or we have a product to meet our clients' need. And really through market research, we're going to understand those needs better. But like I say, it all comes down to this one. Ultimately, whether we're a new business or we've been in business many years, it helps us make better business decisions. We can save money on marketing. And back to that point, we can make ourselves stand apart from our competition. And for most business plans as well, there is going to be a market research section. So particularly if we're going to go and seek external funding, they're going to make, the funder is going to want to know that, well, what you're saying, what your assumption is, there's some proof behind that. And so this is the areas in your business plan that I could see your market research coming into play. And on this final point, I mean, I think these are hopefully these are pretty obvious. Like, we will get a better understanding of how we're going to market and the pricing of our product through looking at maybe competitors. Or we're going to look at, for our location, we're going to look at maybe the demographics of a particular area and make a choice around that. But for our financial plan, there's lots and lots of accurate financial data about businesses in your industry available pretty freely online. So like the Canada CRA collects lots of that, and it's published through Statistics Canada and various other places. So we can look at things like the average expenditure on advertising for a coffee shop. And for a business plan point of view, that's so valuable, because quite often we hear, well, I don't know how much I'll spend on advertising. It depends how busy I am. It depends what time of year it is. But actually, if you're going to project and share this with an external funder, they're going to want some certainty around that. So if you have data that says, do you know what, the average coffee shop in Canada spends 4% of revenue on advertising a year, it's a much stronger position to be in. It's great to have that information yourself. And I'm going to point you in the right direction of where to find that data yourself, but also you can connect with us and we'll definitely help you through that process. I didn't mention this at the start. There is quite a lot of information to cover here. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I can answer some as we go. And if not, we can take them at the end, and I can go a little bit out past 1 o'clock for those people who, have questions as well there. Perfect. So that's why we do market research. So now let's look at the different types of market research that we can access. Primary market research and secondary market research. Primary market is that research that we do ourselves. We go out and gather. That's not widely available to other people. For some larger businesses, they quite often get a third party, a market research business, to do that for them. Or if you're looking to serve clients in a different market, you might have to make that investment. I've been doing lots around exporting recently, and we've looked at how we can connect Alberta businesses with primary market research, which they need on the ground in countries as diverse as Nigeria and Singapore. So there are businesses there, but obviously there's going to be substantial cost to that. Secondary market research are information sources that already exist. It's out there already. I can sit, we call it desk research. I can sit at my desk and I can find that. Some of those are definitely still at a cost. Some are available through us, and some are just freely available online through organizations like Stats Canada or Google. Even have lots of valuable research data available. Typically falls into two categories, and these are crossovers. We can get some qualitative information from our secondary market research. Like we have a database called Statista that does lots around customer perceptions, or what their buying priorities are, and we can get good qualitative information from that. And quantitative, we're looking at data. I don't know if these need explained any more than that, but yeah, with our quantitative data, we're looking at numbers and data, percentages, things like that. Yeah, but I mean, just to make this point, I think the diagram is somewhat misleading here. Be aware that you can and you may need to collect valuable primary market research data that is in fact quantitative. Like I always use the footfall of a particular street. Like if I was wanting to open a new business downtown in Medicine Hat, I probably would want to spend some time on that street making a count of people who are passing by. It's quantitative data, but I'm collecting it in a primary way. I'm doing it myself. It's unlikely to be available on a secondary market research database. Okay. And then here, really, we look into, well, what's the process for doing this? How do I go from my desk and having this idea that I need to market research through to applying it in our business? So firstly, we have to start with the thing of why am I doing it? What am I trying to learn through this process? And I have this all the time. People, they say, I need to do market research. And I have to ask the question, well, what do you want to know? What do you want to understand? And why are you doing it? And so let's use a bit of a medicine hat example here. And I don't know the research that they did, but Redcliffe Bakery, I noticed that they've recently opened a downtown Medicine Hat location. So really when they're thinking, they're going to make a business decision. Where do I expand to? What do we do next? And so they may have considered, okay, well, Medicine Hat is close, but it's very close to Redcliffe. Am I going to open it in Lethbridge? Am I going to open it in Calgary? Am I going to open it in Medicine Hat? So maybe their question that they're going to ask is, where is my next location going to be? And then on from that, what do they specifically want to find out? Do they want to find out what the whole market size is? They want to find out what the disposable income is of people in those particular communities. Do they have a group that they know is their target market and they're women between the age of 50 and 70, let's say? What's the size of that market in those three communities? So, or it starts with a question, what do I want to find out in a very, very broad way? And then what specific questions do I want to do I need the answer to? And then we can look at methods. How are we going to gather that information? So in that case, well, what do I look at? I'm probably going to look at some census details. I'm going to look at some household spending data that's collected from Stats Canada. And the truth is, like, I know these because I work on this every day. But that's often where you need to perhaps have a conversation with us, because we see market research requests go for data that's maybe just not available. Like it can't be got through secondary market research. So once you know what you want to find out, I suppose that's a good time to have a conversation with me or a colleague, and we'll find out, well, what's realistic we can find for you? What can you go and find yourself? And what are you actually going to have to do yourself in terms of market research? So then we do the research. We go and find out that information. We then review it. So we see, okay, the disposable income in Medicine Hat is significantly higher than this area of Lethbridge or this part of Calgary. We are going to go for this location in Medicine Hat. And then obviously in their case, they apply the research, they open their next location. And then the process, and that's why it's a circle, it perhaps starts again. Maybe they're looking at, okay, now what? We're going to open a third location perhaps, or they may have a different research question. It just depends on the specific business situation. But hopefully that example just helps us see that there is a process to this. Perfect. So yeah, like I say, throughout, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm just going to walk us through some secondary market research sources, give us a bit of extra detail information on those. So again, it's the information we collect from secondary sources we haven't done ourselves. It's been previously collected by someone else. So this, to anyone, it's available. So to any bakery that wants to open a bakery in Medicine Hat, they can go and get this information. It's widely available to them. I say widely available. Sometimes it can be pretty expensive to get. Okay, and so we can get these definitely from sources like government resources. We look at census information, Statistics Canada. We're lucky in Canada and lots of Western countries that they collect lots and lots of data. Lots of information is widely available to small businesses because the government have collected it for a variety of reasons. Public databases at universities and at libraries, quite often for local information. Don't discount those. There's often good information there. Industry associations. So the first place that I would want to go to if I was opening, let's say, a business to business operation in Medicine Hat is I would be on the Chamber's website. I would be going and looking at getting a business list from there. Well, I know it's on there, and all chambers would have that. But also we might want to look at industry associations. So if I see myself going to be serving the building and construction industry, I can get lists of businesses from them. But always remember that that association, their mission is to serve their own members. So sometimes, thanks Lisa for sharing your directory, but sometimes, yeah, and there's a freedom of information thing. They're not going to share anything that shouldn't be publicly available with you, but often they can give some good, valuable insight from their area of expertise. You know, Lisa knows Medicine Hat business, and so would be a good contact for that, as an example. Magazines and newspapers, we can use Google, we can search through Google for sure, for things like trend information in our industry, things that are emerging, things that might be relevant to us, investment that's happening in a particular area, and social media. Lots of these things attract online resources. And then I just want to talk briefly about some of the databases that we have, because this is where I say the secondary market research, there can be a cost to things. So we have access to things like that Statista I mentioned before, that has lots and lots of like customer behavior data. And to get a subscription to that yourself is thousands of dollars. And so what we receive our funding from the federal government for that. And they basically recognize that small business is at a competitive disadvantage because they don't have that information. So if I'm Loblaws, I can go and buy a consumer data report for literally $10,000, $20,000. I did one recently. I looked at something and it was the calcium carbonate processing industry in North America. It was a $15,000 research paper. You know, like if I wanted to go and buy that myself, it would be that. So these can be very, very expensive databases. And so, yeah, we have access to those and can share up to 50% of the report with you, and we can edit that and make a choices to the most valuable 50% of that. And I've got one to show you later on, just so you get an impression of what I'm actually talking about when I talk about database and industry information. We have other things like the ability to pull lists of companies. So if I say, okay, I really want to find out businesses in the Brooks region that have more than 30 members of staff and have revenue more than $5 million a year, like that data is collected by an organization like Hoover's, and we can provide that. Like it's widely available. Sometimes it's not completely accurate because it's on how it's reported and things like that, but we can certainly provide how that information to you. Okay, but obviously there are pros and there are cons to that, or at least advantages to it and some limitations to secondary market research. I won't pose the question to the group here, and I hope most of them are pretty obvious. So one, the great thing is lots of it is free, widely available, or low cost, with the exception of those reports that I mentioned. It can be relatively easy to gather. I don't necessarily need to go out and pound the pavements and speak to people. I can sit at my desk and find that. Do a Google search is sometimes a great starting point. But the data is only as good as when it was collected. And I think that this point is particularly relevant now. I was looking at, again, that hair and beauty, that salon report before coming on the call today, and it was from October 2019, so exactly a year old. But the change in that industry in a year as a result of COVID largely is probably huge. And so obviously, yeah, even though it's gathered, it's only as good as when it was collected. Census data, I mean, when was that last collected? 2016. So we're already starting to see probably pretty pretty clear differences to that data, and that's why it's collected on a regular basis. But it's a great starting point. Like, it can start posing us a question. So if I see that report from 2 years ago, well, I can go and ask myself, well, is that still relevant? And maybe I need to go and do some primary market research to dig a little deeper. Obviously, there's a lot of information out there, and that can be a disadvantage to it as well. It can be confusing. It can be, it's great to have, I don't know, the value of Canadian exports to this particular market because it's there. But if I don't need that, it can be sort of confusing and blur the picture. And obviously, just be always aware. I mean, this is maybe particularly relevant today with the US election happening south of us, but always be aware of the source you're getting this data from. Because quite often, people will type something into Google and they'll get some information about their industry. Well, who's it being written by? Maybe it's being written by a lobbyist deliberately to promote this particular industry. So just be aware of the source of information. So again, let's break this down a little bit. So we've got industry and economy. We're going to look at our target market. There's different things here. So yeah, and obviously our competitors as well. So great sources of information for our industry and the economy in general. I'm going to open some of these, but not all of them. So we can get some industry reports from Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. When I send this presentation to you, all these links are live, so you'll be able to go straight to them. It's good practice if you know your NAICS code or NAICS code, sorry. It just will help you find the information in a simpler way. And I mean, to be honest, you can Google lots of things or reach out to us if you're not sure of what your NAICS code is, but that's the industry code that's going to sort of help you there. I'm going to just open two of these. Hopefully they open direct on my screen here, so I could share them with you. Because these are great. Actually, I preloaded them, so I'll just go straight to this. I'm hoping, yeah, everyone can still see my screen. So this is publicly available information through the Government of Alberta website regional dashboard, and it gives us some good general information on Medicine Hat if we'd never been, if we'd never visited before. But then it gathers all the information from different data sources into a nice dashboard, so we can see pretty clearly some important demographic information, information on health, housing, a variety of things. And some of this I always think is pretty fascinating. So if we are a small business and we recognize that a big part of our population, I don't know, is connected with the, let's say we're running a daycare, we can see how this information may be particularly interesting to us, that in 2018, based to the previous year, there was almost an 8% drop in the birth rate. Like it's I can see how in that situation that would be valuable to you. This is always a good measure of economic activity, and again, being aware that all these are 2019, apart from this 2016. We know in Medicine Hat and in lots of communities how that 4 or 5 years is very significant difference. But yeah, like there are so many things that I think are pretty valuable here. Maybe you've got something in the car and auto industry to understand the number of vehicle registrations in the city. Obviously Medicine Hat is relatively big, but you can get this for Redcliffe, you can get this for Cypress County, Brooks, wherever, as long as it's its own municipality. Economic activity, we can see the number of bankruptcies in 2019. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I just think there are so many. And then the health one, 22% of Medicine Hatters are heavy drinkers. So I'm always interested to see how these compare to other places. 20% life stress, 57% overweight. But yeah, I hope business owners can start to see how some of this information will be valuable to them. Okay, I'm just going to get back to sharing from my current slide. So that's that. And then I'm just going to look at the time to see what we have here. Yeah, I think we're okay. So financial performance data. So this is when I was speaking before about, let's say, the coffee shop who are making a decision or need to include in their business plan information on how much they're going to spend on advertising. These are industry reports. And I know that Greg at Community Futures, he's shown me this before, and I know you can access this yourself, but I know Greg has experience in accessing this, so I'm sure he'd more than happy to help. And these are some popular reports that have been, that are pulled on a regular basis. So if we click on one, childcare, this is for Canada. We can change the criteria and break it down to Alberta if we want. That one was based on 34,000 businesses in Canada. But if we just click on Alberta, so we're looking at child daycare services. And now, okay, so the data that we have now is based on the returns, basically based on the tax returns of 4,000 childcare businesses in Alberta. And these are the averages that we would see. And I think these are percentages. And I mean, it takes some digging into yourself, and we again can guide you through this, but the B's and the C's are about how high quality that data is based on the numbers that they have. They have a model for going through these. But back to this is an example. So we're seeing, and I think I've got it on percentages here, 9% of revenue, the average for childcare in Alberta, 9% is spent on rent, as an example. 40% on labor and commissions as an example. So again, if you're planning a business from scratch, or if you're looking at your existing financials and saying, okay, how do I shake up to the rest of the province, to other providers? Let's say my labor and commissions is at 60%. Perhaps I'm paying my people too much, or in fact, I need to pay, or I need to charge my customers more. We can see, back to that advertising and promotion, less than 1% of their revenue is going back into advertising and promotion. But this is interesting, and I know we're going into a bit of detail now, is it splits it out further into the top quartile. So these are the top performers in that industry. So these are I suppose, almost, it's a good one here because we've got 4,000 businesses. So the top 1,000 businesses, well, how much are they spending on labor and commissions? This is very interesting. I think, I'm not sure how true that will be. I mean, yeah, what we're likely to be seeing there is that these are people running just themselves, I would guess, or running very, very small operations. So yeah, when the numbers aren't that high, we see those sort of strange anomalies. And that's why it's sometimes good to connect with people. Yeah, and so we're seeing in this percentile, they're only spending 0.4% on rent. And I imagine that's because they're day homes and operating from their own home. And we're seeing in the bottom quartile, so the least profitable, they're spending 12%. So yeah, that's just a bit of detail, but hopefully people can see how this is valuable to them. Excellent. I'm just going to call back up my presentation here. Yeah. And so that's industry and economy, and looking at how we fit within that. The next part, where we can go and get some secondary market research information for, is our target market. And I spoke about this in the Redcliffe Bakery example there, but who is most likely to be your customer, and who is your ideal customer? These are questions that you may have. Lots of ways that we can look at it. Let's start with businesses here on this side. So quite a few of the businesses here, their customers may be other businesses. We're not all selling direct to consumers. So there's lots of information available out there that might be valuable on number of employees, annual sales, the geographic location of businesses, and considerations for consumer, some of those demographic ones. We mentioned some of these last week when we were looking at target markets as well. But these are, considerations when we're looking at a target market. And these are the sources where we can go and get some valuable information here. So demographic and socioeconomic data, we can go and find that. I had someone not too long ago, they wanted to open a Dutch grocery store I'm trying to keep it nice and anonymous, in a small town in southern Alberta. And they just weren't sure whether it was quite the right community size. They knew there was some Dutch population there, or Dutch language speakers, but they just wanted some confirmation as to whether it was quite right to open there. So we were able to unpack some of the census data, look at, you know, people who spoke Dutch at home as a first language, and various things like that using the census data that's widely available. This is, I don't have time to show everyone all of these, but this is interesting information around how households spend their money, household spending data. So we can look at levels of disposable income, or we could find out on that link, which is freely available, how much people in Medicine Hat spend on cars and motoring each year, vehicles and vehicle maintenance, or how much they spend on eating out at restaurants, or eating out to bring food in and things like that. So we can get that expenditure information, obviously super valuable. See where demographic characteristics are most prevalent in a city. So this is through Canada Post. Again, it's freely available. So if you're saying to Canada Post, okay, I want to market to seniors, they could say, okay, well, these are the postcodes that you need to be in the city. And this one I've only discovered recently, but I think it's so cool. And this is the free version of it. Let me share it here. Can I just click into here? Okay. And so basically, as I'm doing this, can someone write their own postal code in the chat, just because we can do it sort of live for someone who's here. I did one before I came on here for Desert Bloom, the area of Medicine Hat. And what it does, it gives you a bit of a profile of the people who live in a particular area. And obviously it's gathered, you know, like it's not accurate for every single person who's in there, but it gives us an impression of the neighborhood. I thought this was a really good one. So, and they give them sort of names. Each one has names. I think there might be about 90 different categorizations. So people who live in Desert Bloom are the turbo burbs, and it's the wealthiest suburban segment. They're typically middle-class families enjoying the fruits of their labor. They have kids between the ages of 10 and 25, extremely high household income. If you look at the national average, that's probably for a household income, I would say exceptionally high household worth. You know, we're starting to get an impression of this neighborhood. I'm probably not going to open a I don't know, a thrift store in this neighborhood and expect to be inundated with people. I can start making some decisions. Let's do one for let's do Tim's here. He's sort of first off the draw. Yeah, it's great. I think it's just fun. I live in sporty suburban neighborhood here in Brooks, and we all enjoy hockey and things like that. But I thought that was just the whole of Canada. Okay, so Tim's in suburban sports too, and this you know, we can straight away see we're in a lower. I hate to break it to you, Tim. We have a lower household average income, and we can see about level of diversity, and it gives a background. I mean, it's a good starting point for fun, and I think probably it may confirm some of the things that you already know, but it's nice to have that confirmation too. I like this. I could see how this would be valuable for people's marketing. It's how they think, you know, my family is my number one priority. It tells you about their level of optimism for the future, things that they're thinking. I've often worked as a volunteer for a committee and aimed, and so they're sort of civic-minded people. And these are things that they enjoy doing and cars they drive. I thought this one's interesting. I saw this one. So health, they use cough syrup 6 times a month. I don't know if that's true of you, Tim. It's not true of me. But anyway, I hope those people you find that interesting as a resource to explore. And it's freely available. We have a pulp mill in town. Thanks. I don't know how that's, yeah. Oh yeah, because of the cough syrup. Got you. Thanks, Tim. So I can see, yeah, hopefully people find those, and you can see different ones as we go through here. Hopefully they're valuable to people. There's a paid service as part of this as well. That would be, worth exploring if you found sufficient value in it. Yeah, there are 67 lifestyle types. Okay. Let's get back into my presentation here. Perfect. Oh, sorry, I went back. Okay. Oh, yeah. And then so now we can look at some other sources. And this can be useful for now looking at your competition and business information relating to them. So we can definitely pull lists for you, find those, but industry associations are probably a good place to start for that. Lots of you can find them through a website, Google search, and things of that nature, just to help you understand, okay, who's in this space. But probably for lots of small local businesses, it's a Google search, looking at Google My Business, having a look what people have on there. I was working with a client last week up in a community north, north of Edmonton even. And he had a home services business. He was doing lawn care maintenance and snow removal, things like that. And he didn't have a great sense of who his competitors were. So we sat down and we literally used Google My Business. We had Google Maps. We could see where they all were. We could see the level of marketing that they were doing as well. And it just gave him a starting point. I would expect him or hope that his next step would be to go and find out how much they were charging, perhaps make a document of that. Just having that information, it's just a valuable starting point for sure. If businesses don't have that online, and lots don't, you're going to have to do the pretending to be a customer phone call. Nothing wrong with that. People do it all the time. People will do it to you. Okay, and then other online resources that are available and interesting, hopefully, to people. I always like this one. It's Google Trends. I would think that most people will be in the habit of checking their competitors' websites and social media pages from 2 points of view, really. Like one, yeah, we want to see what they're doing. But for things that are from further away, we also might want to be inspired as well, like get some great ideas. If there is a home maintenance company in Kelowna doing something awesome and you see it on their social media, well, who's to say that can't come to Medicine Hat and that you can't learn from that? So I would say look at the leaders in your industry in terms of social media following, things like that. Okay, what are they doing that's making them successful? Are there parts of their business that you could adopt to help you as well? I mean, that's from a marketing point of view, but also from a product service design point of view as well. The way they're pricing, the way they're organizing how people can connect with them. Like, are there things you can learn from them? These websites they basically, I know most about Springwise, they look at international trends. And so let's say in home security, what is happening in Germany right now? That if I'm a home security business here in Medicine Hat, I can look at and think, okay, could that work here? Or in insulation is what they're doing in, I don't know, Australia, anything we could learn from here. Maybe not. And so those are, valuable to look at. Having a look at customer reviews, super useful. Your own, but also others as well. So by looking at your reviews of your competitors, you're already starting to see, well, what gap can I fill? Like, what do people find slightly frustrating about that other service? And again, don't have to stick strictly to Medicine Hat. If you are looking at reviews from Calgary businesses, you probably can still learn from the 3-star reviews of businesses in your industry, because you're learning what people's common frustrations are if you don't have that information yourself. Google Trends, it's just basically, it gives us it tells us what people are searching for at particular times. And so we can look at, I don't know, what things I'm looking at here. Computer, microphone, and we can look at the level of interest over time, where it's popular, things like this. And so this is an interesting one because we see very, very sort of low, average movement right up until we're all working from home doing webinars and meetings like this. And we shoot straight up, so like this is when coronavirus hit. And then everyone's buying them. And then we see something of a downward trend. Who knows where that's going to go, continue in the future. But we can look at these right over time as well. So we can look at how that's trended over the last 5 years. Yeah, it provides a clear peak, things like that. If I'm a home hardware business and I'm wondering about when I should bring in my Christmas lights. I mean, some of these, I think this is obviously very, very obvious, but we can see. And when I need to understand about, okay, when do I need to offload and discount these by? Yet no one is searching past January 12th. So, there's interesting data available there. If you know, obviously you guys know your business is better, so you can understand which search terms people may be searching for. So you can see trends, like if you're exploring a business idea, I don't know, I want to do artificial fake grass installation in people's homes. Well, if you think that's a great business, but in fact the trend is not going in the right direction for you, well, you might need to look at a way of reinventing that business idea, perhaps. Perfect. Like I say, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We've got about 12 minutes left, so I'm going to move on to primary market research. Colton Van Huren, what would you suggest for research sources for getting into the education software sector? Again, it depends, Colton, on what question do you want to answer. Got to understand that first. So what do you want to find out? So if you want to find out let's say this is for junior high age kids. Well, we probably would want to understand how many junior high age kids are. If we then want to think, okay, well, this really is going to require a parent at home with a college level education. Okay, so now how many school age kids, how many of those have parents at home with college educations? Okay, now we want to understand where do they live. So we're now looking for junior high kids with parents with college level education, and I want to know which neighborhoods they live in. There are definite information sources we can pull for that, and the postcode checker, things like that. Imran Ahmed, how do we find out if people watching their calories by app is going up in trend? How do we do it? Let's just do this. So we could look at something like, in Google, so we could look at calorie counting, maybe, I don't know. We could pull this out a little bit further. And we can see something of a consistent image there. We might then look at, so what are some of those calorie, MyFitnessPal is a calorie counting app, isn't it? So we could look at that as a search term over time. We can see when it peaks. This wouldn't surprise me if it's in. That's interesting that it peaked at that time. So that particular calorie counting app, we can probably see a downward trend, but who knows if, Noom. Who knows? I've recently been on Noom. I've been using Noom, and I've look at this. So this is Noom, which is what they call this, Weight Watchers for millennials. And we can see this was probably around the time there was maybe a major article on it in a big newspaper, something like that. That's why we saw this big peak. So sometimes we have to remove the peaks and trough, but we can see that Noom is going in that direction. Weight Watchers, or I think they're now branded WW. Just the nature of that term, it makes it a little bit problematic, because WW, it not necessarily always going to be about Weight Watchers. There's just maybe a little bit of a problem with that one. Yeah, look at these related search topics are Call of Duty, World War II, things like that. But yeah, like we can see, yeah, how various things, and it's live, like it's even right in the real time. It's pretty interesting how it goes. Okay, where am I here? Sorry, I jumped off there. And oftentimes we'll have to go to a few places, Imran, like we might look, I mean, for that one in particular, calorie counting might not be where I start. I might look at health food and nutrition, interest in health food and nutrition in Canada as a starting point. And I would probably pull a report on that, or I don't know, personal fitness coaching, or variety of things. So it's, I mean, you're right to identify that it's what people are looking for. It's not, I'm an app producer. It's like, what's the thing people are looking to get out of it? Because for that particular calorie counting app, there are lots of competitors, aren't there, that aren't straight up competitors. Your competitors for a calorie counting app aren't other calorie counting apps necessarily. They are Weight Watchers, but they are also Anytime Fitness, and they're whatever, people are hoping to achieve something, and there are many different ways to achieve that potentially. It definitely would be one for a longer conversation. So from current slide, perfect. Now, our primary market research is where we go direct to the source. We go and ask people, or we get someone to ask them for us. We've done our secondary market research. Maybe we've identified big trends, things like this, but now we need to go and really understand. And this is where we ask questions, we meet with people, we run questionnaires, surveys, focus groups, Zoom calls, whatever it is that's going to help us answer our questions. And obviously there are advantages and limitations here too. One, that is, it's going to give us some of that local information that we're unlikely to get elsewhere. The Medicine Hat buying public may have just some different views, based on a variety of things, and will have different views to the people of Edmonton, and so to get that information of your local market, quite often that's what you're going to need. And I used that example before of understanding the footfall on a particular street, if that's where you're planning on opening it. You're just not going to find that anywhere else necessarily. It helps you answer a specific question. So if my question, back to, I think it was Colton asked about the education app, there may be, let's say, I don't know, you want to understand whether people want to pay on a subscription basis or whether they want to buy this product on a one-off basis. For that particular target audience that you have of parents of junior high age kids, that data might not be out there. It might not be available. Yes, we can see trends in software increasingly on a subscription basis, and we can see trends in people using apps for that type of things. But those trends are general ideas. We might want to go and interview 15 parents of junior high age kids to understand, well, what's your preference? What would you want? What could you see yourself doing? What do you do? And I think that's sometimes a good question. Like, if it's great saying to them, okay, do you see yourself subscribing to this app? And quite often they might say, yeah. But the question, which apps do you subscribe to, may get you a more accurate response, because they may not be subscribing to any apps. They might do the free version every single app. And so whatever, like it's very industry dependent. And it allows for a more back and forth dialogue. You can ask more questions. You can go in more depth to get that. The downside of it is it's time consuming. We've got to actually go and do it and have these conversations. And to have data that's worth anything, we probably need to go and speak to more than one or two people. We need to observe more people. It can be expensive, particularly if we outsource it to a third party. There tends to be a lot of man hours or woman hours involved in collecting it, so we can expect it to be expensive. And typically speaking, if we're going to put a survey out there, like I know from a business link perspective as an organization, we can put it out to 4,000 people, and we'll expect a single figure response. If we were to do a market research survey on, what what do you think about Business Link? We're expecting to see a very, very small response. Thank you, Lisa. So what is a valuable, valid sample size in surveys? 30% of your target market? I don't think there's a specific number in terms of a percentage. It depends what type of decision we're going to be making off the back of it, I suppose. So yeah, for a survey, for instance, yeah, I just don't think that there is like a hard and fast number that would make us confident to make that assumption. Like for secondary market research, like they have sample sizes that they can be confident that the information they're providing is accurate. But for us in our primary market research, like maybe we want to speak to 5 people, and understand their depth, because our total addressable market might only be 100 people. And by speaking to those 5, we get a really, really sense of it. So I don't know if if I would be confident in saying a specific number. Imran says, how do you get to know if customers will prefer a freemium or paid version from an interview? What questions can you ask? I think asking about current behavior is probably much more reliable way of finding that information than asking about intention. So finding out like, what apps do you subscribe for now? And if you speak to my dad, he'll say, no, I just use the free version of everything. And he uses my Netflix and my Amazon or whatever. Whereas I probably have apps I should cancel, like I don't necessarily think when it's $3.89 a month, there are things I definitely probably never use and should cancel. So I just think by speaking to people and finding out what their current behaviors are is probably a really good place to start, Imran. And secondly, if you are making an innovative feature, how do you, if customers will pay for it? From an interview, before cars, people were happy with horses. Absolutely, Imran. And the Steve Jobs Apple thing here as well. Like he would never have, people didn't know they wanted an iPad before he made an iPad. And that could be true for so many things. But I think what he understood very, very well was how customers used his technology currently. Like, the iPad did follow the iPhone, and he was addressing maybe a market who weren't fully satisfied with what they were getting from the iPhone, but didn't want a laptop. He understood that market for sure. And so I think it does go back down to understanding that market and running probably focus groups, sharing people. Can you do like a minimal viable product? Share with them the innovative feature. Do people care about it enough? Does it have enough impact on their life for them to be able to pay for it? But yeah, like for sure, there are always things that people didn't know they wanted before it existed. Okay, so some tips here, and again, this will be shared as we go through. It can be overwhelming to do this, talk to strangers, things like that. But I mean, I had some advice with this, and it was just like, you just got to build a bridge and get over it. Like, you are going to have to speak to customers. And so going and speak to someone in the street or contacting someone online to get more feedback from them. It's something that you just have to do if you want to prepare for success. Best method of reaching your target market, it varies for different groups, of course, because if I want to reach a group of seniors, I'm not going to try and get them to engage with me on Snapchat necessarily, but it's a variety of different ways. Facebook groups, I think, are increasingly a really great place to go if you want to get a specific, the feedback from a specific group. Be careful of the rules around them. You might get kicked out if you try and sell. But on the whole, like if I wanted to go and, I don't know, let's say I was getting into the janitorial supply business and I wanted to connect with cleaners and understand their needs better. There are lots of online groups of cleaners throughout North America where I can, they may not go on to be my customers, but I can probably learn a lot about their challenges, pain points, whatever. And same with Imran here, you know, like there are lots and lots of online communities who are really quite focused, obsessed about calorie counting and weight gain and all of those things. So by joining some of those communities, by searching discussions that have been had previously, you can certainly learn lots. Primary research tips. Obviously, I mean, these are just some basic best practices, like telling people what you're doing and acting in an ethical way. If you're telling people that you're doing market research, well, it's only fair game to add them to your marketing list if you actually get permission from them for that part of it. You know, I can't go and ask everyone, oh, I'm doing market research, and then just add them to my email spam list. So just be ethical in terms of that. There are some ethical guidelines there linked for that. In terms of next step, I just want to briefly talk through if you were to want to access the business link resource here. I always encourage speak to us first. Like we have a form on our website, but a good number of the inquiries that they get just is information that couldn't be obtained through secondary market research. And there is a 2 to 3 week turnaround time for market research requests. So potentially you're sort of wasting your time, you know? And so speak to me first, and I can say, okay, well, yeah, we'll be able to find the answer to that. This less likely. So reach out. Mine's matt@businesslink.ca. Couldn't be easier. And you've got links to lots of the resources here as well. We don't do primary market research. Like we can maybe look at your questionnaire that you plan to ask or review your market research plan in terms of primary market research, but I'm not going to go around to people in Medicine Hat and ask questions for you. But yeah, secondary market research. Information depends on industry. Like we had lots of people wanting information on the cannabis industry. It's coming through slowly now, but it is still in its earlier stages. We're a smaller market than the US, so often the information available for Canada is a little more limited than the US, but sometimes we can learn lots from that US market as well. Like there are differences, but there are for sure similarities to note. Yeah. And then that's it. The market research request can be had if you click on the link in this slide, but it does take about 3 weeks because there's lots of requests and it's a free service, and you can understand that. I'm not going to go on the questions to consider that we have here, but these are some of the questions that that you may want to consider as you engage in market research. Yeah, those are my contact details. It's been good to speak, and thanks for the few questions that we've had. I know I've rushed towards the end there, just because an hour is not a long time. I'm learning this.
It's not very long, is it?
No, it's not. Lots of information. I know that's a dense information session, and so yeah, feel free to reach out if you want something in a bit more of a sensible pace.
Well, and this will be available up on the YouTube channel once Mike is back. He'll get rid of the fodder at the beginning and put up just the important information for everyone, so they'll be able to access it. And there's still 2 more to come. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, but it's not me. My colleague Mark, who is just has different areas of knowledge to me. So he's going to speak about financing, 5 ways to finance your business next week. And then this audience is going to be the guinea pig audience for his new pricing workshop. So basically what he gets you to do is look at all the different inputs that you may have for your product or service, and a way to price that effectively. I sort of saw a trial run of it on Friday and I find it interesting, but maybe it's the geek in me.
Maybe it's the geek in you. Anyways, a geek with an accent, we always like that. So thanks so much, Matt, for your time. And
it's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks
for answering all the questions.
Lisa, for joining, and Colton, and everyone who asked a question. Good to speak to you all.
See you later.
See you now. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.